All right, so welcome to this week's forum. The topic is our draft budget, an aspirational story for our church in 2021-22. And our speakers today are Richard Hayes, Kay Hahn, Jack Hurley, and Ren Manning. So they're going to share, as a stewardship team, they're going to share more about this year's stewardship campaign. All right, so with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jack.
Okay, good morning to our Unitarian faithful, all 6 of you, or 8 of you, but that's okay. It isn't the quantity, it's the quality. Who else do we know who are so energetic on a Sunday morning to review stewardship results from last year and our goals for this year? Last year was one for the books. We were fortunate to almost complete our stewardship campaign by the end of March. We were lucky with an unbelievably supportive early on pledge drive with our die-hard congregation. Here are some edited results from last year's campaign and the reality of where we are today, and more to come during the next part of the presentation. Total results of the campaign last year was 429,145. That is a result of 256 pledge units, and understand that some congregation members give as a couple, just to be clear. We presently have approximately 415 members, and we are growing even during our Zoom year. Pledging this year will ensure our continued success. So this past year has been an obvious challenge, but with all these challenges, we have been successful to complete a lime wash for our whole cathedral, keep our properties up to date, increased our rental income for parking, redefined our operational staff, and best of all, we're looking good for our next minister, who will be voted on at the congregational meeting this coming May. Now, we've been told that our next minister in our search will be looking for 3 or 4 specific items. 1, an interesting local urban locale, hopefully warm, check. 2, a dynamic congregation with sound staff and lay leadership, check. A financially sound congregation, check. An open congregation of social justice in their community, check. So now we'll go to the most mesmerizing part of your Sunday morning. So get a coffee in your hand, and we begin with our masters of budgets and numbers, Ren Manning and Richard Hayes. And then we'll have a follow-up and a quick inspiration by our stewardship committee member, Kay Hahn. Our theme this year is ties that bind, and you will see why. Okay, boys.
Thank you, Jack. And if anyone has any questions or comments, please put them in the chat, and that will be monitored, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask those questions, and we will hopefully be able to answer. So as I was thinking about putting this program, the piece of this program on the budget together, it occurred to me the obvious impression that budgets are not terribly inspiring, and people do not pledge to budgets. People pledge to programs, and they pledge to aspirations, and they pledge to hopes, and they pledge to dreams and generosity. So I said, well, how am I going to do this? And so then I started looking down the budget to see how to present the cold hard facts. And it occurred to me as I went down the budget that the budget is really, I got excited about this budget. It's the aspirational story of our church for 2021. And we have a lot to be looking forward to and getting excited about. The stars and planets are aligned, I am convinced, for a great year for our church and a great stewardship campaign. Pledges are critical inputs to preparing a budget. We always have to educate new members about, well, I can't pledge. I don't know whether I'll be able to do this or that, or I'll just throw money in the offering plate. Please estimate what you will be able to give and what you are incented to give, and pledge that amount. It's indispensable information for being able to prepare a budget. And if mid-year your circumstances change and you need to change the amount that you pledged, you can always call the office and change that either up or down, and we can make adjustments as we go forward. But we need this information. The number one critical quality of our pledge goal this year was that it be reasonably achievable and inspirational. Our pledge goals in previous years have been heart-stoppingly aggressive, but we wanted to make sure that we didn't cause concern this year and ask an amount that was not reasonably achievable. We figured that the most important thing is to be able to make the pledge drive goal. It would be buoyant to the congregation's spirit coming out of shutdown. And it would be a demonstration to our new settled minister of an enthusiastic church on firm financial footing. So the past several years, we have seen stabilization and now significant growth with the addition, as Jack noted, of actually 31 new members and 33 new pledges since our first virtual pathways class last June, which really amazed me that we could get that done. This year's pledge goal is modest, achievable, enabling, and encouraging, and I actually believe we can exceed it. Okay, Richard. People always ask how this budget compares to last year's budget or actual operating results. But actually we can't answer that question because it's all incomparable to last year's budget or actual operating results, because we are budgeting for in-person operations beginning around Labor Day. And much of the previous budget and financial results came to reflect the fact that we were going to be in virtual operations for most of the year. Several things that are going to be different. We will be, in addition to that, we will be spending, I'd like to call it investing, to grow our income streams from rentals of our sanctuary and Gage Hall. And we have budgeted generously for our settled minister, our settled minister's comp, to give encouragement and freedom to the search committee to go after the best possible candidate without worrying whether we would have to pay more than our budget would allow. And we have learned how to optimize our activities through virtual platforms to accommodate greater and more convenient committees and worship options, which can, of course, enhance membership growth. Okay, Richard. So staffing, a couple of points on how the staffing is reflected in the budget. We have formalized Danielle Lopez's responsibilities to include membership recruitment and care in addition to her pre-existing RE duties, at least until such time as growth in membership requires splitting that role again and hiring another staff member. So the membership recruitment and the RE really sort of go hand in hand, because the more new members that we are able to attract, the more children and adults that would be good candidates to participate in our RE activities. That'll all grow together. And new membership will increase pledges and income. So again, this all sort of grows together and makes sense to ask Danielle to wear that other hat formally. We've upgraded the responsibilities and hours of our extraordinary bookkeeper, Christine Magnorella Ray, who is now on staff with expanded hours and benefits. And she is a wonderful, wonderful addition to our staff. She is also bookkeeping for her ex-home UU church in Asheville, and is very conversant with tax laws applicable to churches. And she participates in industry groups and conferences and pays for her compensation many times over. So we're grateful for her. Other staff comp levels are proposed in our budget to be held flat in 2021-22, reflecting negative CPI and our ability to make up for that with having given what we call pandemic bonuses to staff out of really good financial results during calendar year 2020. And in terms of sexton, we will not plan to hire back a sexton per se, as Sandra has developed a way to fulfill those duties more economically and efficiently by relying on enhanced contract services and ad hoc engagements to support weddings and other special functions that will, many of which will be paid for by the event sponsors themselves. You might look for Joe. He might be back for one of these special support functions. And luckily, the extraordinary cost of searching for, wooing, and moving our new settled minister will not have to be budgeted. It'll be paid for by endowment grants. And I am very excited to tell you that we will continue to address much needed deferred maintenance and upgrades around the campus to bring our physical facilities up to good condition and expand and the beauty of our facilities, including our churchyard. And we will welcome our new settled minister and our members back in person with a gleaming new lime wash sanctuary with a just recently resurfaced roof, churchyard renovation, painted and redecorated Gage Hall, outside and inside, and more. So we are investing to upgrade our facilities to attract additional rental income from weddings and concerts, to draw new members and to boost our own spirits. We expect to be able to balance the budget for 2021-22 with a diminishing amount of carryover surplus from this year's operations. Okay, so let's take a look at financial results so far this year. Through January, which is the last month that we have data, 58% of the fiscal year, we have received 67% of budgeted pledge payments. I must say, however, that through looking back historically, about 72% of our pledges have been paid through January. So we will be exhorting our membership to pick up the pace a little bit. Other categories of income and expenses are coming in as expected. Virtual operations have been good to us financially, as they have saved tens of thousands of dollars by closing the buildings and have allowed us to creatively restructure staffing needs. And of course, the robust stock market has enabled pledge payments to remain stronger than we would have imagined a year ago. So please keep up a good job of paying pledges from last year's campaign. And our ability to end in the black depends almost entirely on members keeping current with their pledge payments. Our finance team will be reaching out to members who have not paid anything yet on their pledges to urge a continuing commitment to payments as our expenses occur throughout the year. So on payment of pledges, now obviously is an opportune time to continue paying pledges and maybe even considering paying off the balance of your current pledges. There are different ways to do this that may offer advantages. You can donate appreciated stock and get the benefit of the fair market value for your donation without incurring capital gains tax. And if you have an IRA, consider a direct transfer from your IRA to the church. The laws that gave you a holiday on having to take a taxable distribution again, or last year, no longer applies, and you will need to take a taxable distribution again this year, but you can avoid taxation on the amount distributed directly to the church. That will lower your adjusted taxable income, perhaps dropping you to a lower tax bracket. So you can have your cake and eat it too, because besides capturing all these benefits, you can also take a larger standard deduction. Normally, if you take the standard deduction, you cannot take a tax deduction for charitable donations, but you can have the benefits of that I just described for an IRA direct transfer and still take the larger standard deduction. It's almost too good to be true. And with the stock market at all times high, now is the best time to do that. So if you think you would be interested and it makes sense for you, pick up the phone tomorrow morning and check with your tax advisor and your financial advisor. And if interested, contact Christine. Her email address is up on the screen now, and she can lead you through the steps on how to do that. So financially, the future of our church has never looked brighter. A pledge drive success will be the icing on the cake and will get us off to a fantastic start with our new settled minister. As Jack would say, let's get her done. So that's the essence of the financial presentation. Richard has a few more slides on the actual budget and the pie chart that shows where our monies are going, which if there is interest, we can throw up and talk about that. So if there are any...
Let's go to Kay.
Let's go to Kay, and then we'll come back for any questions or comments that are raised in the chat.
Great. Wonderful job, Ren. Very thorough and very reassuring to us as well. So good morning, everyone. Since our stewardship forum today happens to coincide with that sweet little holiday, Valentine's Day, which celebrates ties of human affection, I couldn't resist digging out this old soft red feather boa that was in a drawer upstairs and wrapping it around my neck for you to see. Why? Because this boa is a costume piece that I wore in a church service auction event lots of years ago. Oh, did we have fun that night? We were singing, we were performing for a sizable crowd of happy, generous Unitarian friends. Could have been Super Bowl halftime. I've never worn it again, sadly, but this extravagant boa symbolizes wonderfully for me the lasting ties that I have for our Unitarian Church. My affectionate tie to the church has accompanied lots of other connections that were very important to me over the years, and many of those connections have passed by now. There was my mother, my husband, lots of friends, work life, lots of pets and homes and hobbies, and all were very much a part of my growth and my learning. They're all interwoven with the constant presence of this church and its comfort and its struggles and its love and its wisdom. So, oh, this soft, tattered old boa represents for me many, many past and present ties to our strong church. So we've been listening this morning to the annual reminder call to you to be a steward, a caretaker of our core Unitarian beliefs, not only through your actions, but also through your financial support, because we are the stewards of our foundation here on Archdale Street, the buildings that gather us, the churchyard that delights us, and the staff who support our endeavors and our dreams. We've heard today from Ren and our designated stewards. We've heard them tell us about their thoughtful attention to the heartbeat of our ministry. They demonstrate for us their honesty. They speak frankly to reassure us of what is really necessary for our success. So we understand that the call to join to do stewardship every year is a great opportunity. It asks us to remember why we have sought this community. What taut ties maintain the tension between spirit and action? They may be ties of conscience and duty, or shared values, or the tied together power to bring about needed change. Perhaps they're ties to the gathered goodwill and tender hearts nurturing our growing children. Or they may be ties to a shared existential sense of necessary environmental action. Perhaps our ties stretching into this space help bring acceptance and reject old, deep, nonsensical hatreds. So the ties that bind. Bound together, mind and body, we can accomplish miracles. We Unitarians don't need old mythic dream worlds. We go forward together and create newer, kinder stories. So my BOA is a delicious, red, extravagant, memorable tie to the years and the people and the good times and the good causes that the Unitarian Church has helped me achieve for more than 35 years. What would I be? What would I have been without it? So I'm a glad caretaker. I'm glad to give. And surely all of us are. Thank you and happy Valentine's Day.
Okay, Kay, that was great, inspirational. I'm getting out my checkbook.
All right, good deal.
All right, I noticed that
Here's my little thing.
Nancy,
Sorry, just I gotta say it, to where I tied one on. So I'm gonna pledge early.
answer to Nancy's question is that what was last year's pledge goal? It was $420,000.
Correct. So if there's any questions, just stick them in the chat box and Danielle will address it to whoever can address the question. Answer.
Yes. Can I first ask, let's see, so you answered Nancy's question. Simon, did you feel like your question was answered?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it would be nice to know details. How much less?
How much less than last year or how much less than the budget?
How much less has our expenditures been than was budgeted?
Well,
Something like 30,000 under expenditures, ran something like that.
yeah, I would have to do some digging and some analysis because it's almost comparing apples to oranges. For instance, we had some major staffing changes, as I mentioned. We no longer have a separate membership coordinator, and we no longer have a sexton, and so that drives a lot of the changes. The buildings have been shuttered, and so the utility usage has been way down. The building upkeep and maintenance have been way down because we've not been on premises. And, you know, there've been some other, those have been the major changes, but there've been also committees have been active, but they have not, they've not been spending money and charging. So committee expenses are down. There's been some changes in insurance because the amount that we budgeted was a little bit higher than it has come in at. Sandra, if you know, pipe in with some additional expense savings that we have realized.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on definitely the major ones. You know, office expenses. So it sounds silly, but we're not printing the order of service every week. We're not ordering paper and copy expenses and color copies. And so all of those things, small things that just add up, and then larger things, of course, with salary and some pension savings with those changes in staffing. But so I think we've seen so far this year a significant savings, which has been very helpful during a pandemic and with concerns about where we would be just in general, you know, with some revenue down. So
I can actually give some, just having gotten the January financial reports, deviations from budget if you want any particular numbers. For instance, we are down almost $25,000 on personnel expenses for some of those reasons that we mentioned. Church programs, music, RE, et cetera, down over $5,000. Office expenses that Sandra was talking about, down over $2,000. Buildings and grounds, cleaning, utilities, et cetera, down almost $12,000. Insurance and taxes down over $4,000. So almost every category that you look at is down. Is that close enough, Simon?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. And I see, let's see, in the chat, David Ruoff made a comment. Being a bit surprised that 1/3 of the pledges haven't been paid yet. I'll speak from personal experience, Dave, that my husband and I were budgeting yesterday. We took advantage of that rainy day and we were like, oh, we got to finish paying our church pledge. Like, it's just one of those things that was out of sight, out of mind, but it will get paid, you know.
I think that's true. And I can say too, I think that oftentimes we start the stewardship conversation and forget that technically people have a number of months. These payments are not due until the end of June. And a lot of the monies that we're looking at for people that have not started paying are some of our, not always, but some of our lower pledges. And so that's one payment. It's not, a monthly payment necessarily. And so I'm not overly surprised, but we will reach out to people and make sure, most importantly, that they've been participating virtually. And so that their first call after a pandemic year is not, hey, we haven't seen you in a year, it's time for stewardship. So we're looking at that very closely and taking that seriously on a number of levels.
Yeah, we don't know exactly. I guess that's not true. Sandra has been trying to keep up with the people that have shown up at least once or twice virtually at worship services, right? And so she will be trying to do some analysis of people that may have fallen off the table, moved, quit, gone away, whatever. Other people have maybe come in maybe once a month or twice a month or something like that. And the degree of people's participation and continued activity will help us figuring out, how to approach some people that haven't started paying their pledges. But,
Nancy has her hand up.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll second Danielle's point that I'll speak for myself again. Whoops, I'm way behind on my pledges because I just haven't come to church. So I think maybe a lot of people who are regular pledgers, just the physical going to church jogs your memory. So I will pay up, but I think that's, so David Roof, I wouldn't be so concerned.
Nancy, while you're speaking, do you want to ask the question you put in the chat box?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it was regarding, I'd love to see a pie chart if budgets are aspirational. By the way, you did a fabulous job on salaries, on staff, on facilities, but we're talking aspirational budget. Is there a pie chart that shows committees and programs?
There you go.
Beautiful. Love it. Love it.
Ask and ye shall find.
Okay, my question is, it's not a question. I wanted to just put in a note from the caring committee that we try to keep up with people that we find that aren't coming to church. Not particularly good at it, but all of us make phone calls to people that we don't see, haven't seen, wonder how they're doing. Good example is Ann Hammond and Chuck Hammond. You know who I'm speaking of. Anyway, point is that there are a lot of people who are out there who, or who struggling at home and don't need any specific help, but and I had somebody I called and she said, oh, you're the only person in church that calls me. And I explained that we sort of passed names around and kept track of people based on who we knew better. And that's why she heard from me more than she heard from some other people. But that kind of thing happens informally, and I think it's very positive.
That's great. Thank you, Judy. And do you funnel that information back to Sandra and David? David?
No, well, Dave is very much in contact with Marcia. Most of these people don't have problems, and if we think they do, we'll ask a question. The Hammonds are a good example. They're both have difficulties. She's really handicapped, and she wasn't coming to. They weren't coming to church online, and I called, and Chuck said, "Well, actually, Ann told me this. She swims on Sunday morning down at Medical University. It's the only time she can get in the pool now because they've changed the hours." And that's why they dropped off the Sunday morning list. So there are all sorts of reasons why we might see people, or anyway. And I think it's a good, somehow or other, a good message for us to give the whole church to keep track of each other. Always, not just in these times.
Well, one of the things that we're hoping for is that we'll be able to use our experience running virtual worship services to present a 9 o'clock virtual service, even after we go back in person, which would give people a second option to be able to participate in worship. Of course, we don't really know what our new settled minister is going to want to do, and we know what David would do if he were still going to be here, but we don't know what the wishes of the new settled minister would be. We have not put in the budget the cost of running a second virtual service, because the range of expenses runs from like $10,000 additional all the way up to $20,000 for a Cecil B. DeMille, high-tech production.
What are we getting now?
That's a big unknown. We think we'll be able to find the money to do whatever the new minister wants to do, but that's something that we hope we'll be able to do and capture somebody like Ann Hammond that might be able to zoom in on a worship service. The 11 o'clock is not you come to 11 o'clock or you don't get worship at our church. We hope to be able to provide other opportunities.
I think that's terrific. And I think it's essential because there are a bunch of us, and I speak personally, we're getting older and we're not going to be coming downtown as much, maybe ever. In a few years. So, and there are a lot of people in my age group, although most of them are a couple of years younger, they're coming up, and this is going to happen to more and more people. And we want to keep in touch, and this is a great way to do it.
I just think that's so great. I can't hold my tongue anymore. It's so important because we are a church, a big chunk of our church it's in the 65 plus group. Our church, our leadership and investment and passion and time. And it makes sense a lot of times in retirement to really invest yourself in church. And one of the great heartbreaks is that then there are in the life cycle changes, and church, the ability to do church will drop off. You can no longer climb on the roof as Ren does in order to paint each tile. I mean, there's a time that comes. And the question is, how do we reach that community so we keep in touch, including if you move to be with your kids in Topeka, but you still every Sunday want to see these faces. And I just think that's one of the most powerful things about the Zoom experience is we've started to gather up folks, skewing elder, some of the missing people, but other folks who frankly, everything from social anxiety disorder to mobility challenges to get into town are now participating. And that's the silver lining, biggest silver lining of COVID in my book.
Thanks,
Dave.
Dave.
A lot of people have gotten lulled in the convenience of being able to attend a service at home, especially if you live farther away. So as much as many of us are looking forward to being in person physically at the church, there are probably some folks who are going to say, wow, I got used to this. It's pretty cool. This is just a bit more, now I don't feel like going downtown. So just to reinforce that.
I want to pick up Sarah's comment, who had a word of gratitude up there from Somerville for the virtual service. One thing I have in mind, and maybe someone said it, I could envision a world, even for myself, I lived out in the country, where I pick first Sundays to go into Charleston couple church with a fancy lunch and seeing friends, and the other days be on Zoom and sort of mix it up. And so we've thought about that. Danielle and I have been talking about that. How do you do programming such that, for instance, there's a covenant group after church, so you could do that, or lunch bunch, once a month for folks so they can have, you know, a thicker day. Or of course the RE hour. Simon's been leading this wonderful forum for so long that you think about chunking up adult religious education, worship experience, and then breaking bread with friends, and that might be your one time a month.
Okay, I see that Nancy Simpson had a question about the small piece of the pie that is represented by social justice. Richard, I know, and I have talked about that, and we've done some analysis that is really a misleadingly small contribution of our church toward, and our members toward, social justice activities. Richard, can you amplify that?
Well, sure. I mean, you know, it doesn't include, let's say, all the monies that we personally give to KGM that we pledge each year. And that number is an amazing number. It's the largest of any church within KGM. It's like $35,000 that we personally pledge individually, beside the $5,000 that's in the budget that the church gives KGM. So that's just one great example.
And we got coffee house contribution to Mitchell Schools programs. We've got the music candlelight concerts, which also provide donations in the social justice category, but those are not budgeted, and so they tend to get overlooked. Another thing is we've been sharing the offering plate, and for the first 7 months of this year, we have shared like $7,000. It's like $1,000 a month that we get in the offering plate that we give away. Again, you know, wasn't in the budget, but just something we decided to do. So
Nancy has another question.
Yeah, it's a follow-up to this, actually. It seems to me that aspirational is the really cool thing. And if we are truly aspirational, we need to capture, maybe not in the budget, but capture exactly what you're saying. What are we giving to KGM? What are we giving to social action? And that 11% category doesn't do it justice. So is there a way to reconfigure or convey to people, not just in the budget pie chart, but truly what we are doing for committees? So in that 11%, you've put together dues, committees, and social justice. Separate them out, account for them to show what really good work we're doing.
We can take that as an action. That's a great idea.
I asked, what's the budget projection for this year? I didn't get it at the beginning.
what, I'm sorry.
What's the budget projection for this year?
Oh, you mean what it is the pledge drive?
Yeah,
440.
440.
Yes.
Right. The total budget though is 622,000.
But we tried to be modest and conservative in setting a pledge goal, because we thought that the most important thing about a pledge goal this year is that we make it.
Yeah. All right, so we have about 5 minutes left. So I want to make sure that all questions are going to get answered. I see please look at the chat. There's a lot going on in there, you know, about the new database, about other things that we give. So anyone else have a question? Oh, let's see. Gail has a question. Gail, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Oh, there's a Gail question about are these fundraising functions going to have to pay for using the facilities? And I think
we were speaking of the coffee house, and I've heard that some of the fundraising events like the coffee house or the Alliance sales or the candlelight service are going to be charged a small amount for using facilities. And I was just wondering if that's true.
That has been taken out of the budget.
Good, thank you.
Proposed budget for next year. It created a firestorm of controversy, and it was over $375. And so
yeah,
it was pretty easy to decide that it wasn't worth it.
For the service, but I want to say thanks.
Good, thanks.
Oops.
Simon has a question. Oh, do you want to see the whole
Richard, right?
Richard, can you throw up the budget? We've got a condensed version of the budget that you can see if Richard can find that slide. Oh, where's the other 200,000 coming from if pledge is only going to be 440 and it comes from rents of the parking lot, rents of the apartment, auction, things like that.
Weddings, events.
Richard, are you there?
No, it looks like we lost Richard actually. So I know he was having some internet troubles when we first started, so he might have gotten kicked off. I'm sure, Diane, that maybe he can email it to you.
I have it on a spreadsheet that I could, if I could.
But typically we have the budget goes out for the congregational vote after the pledge drive has begun and the vestry has approved it. We don't typically email out a full budget prior to approvals.
Last thoughts?
What we do is we put together an estimated draft budget for the purpose of seeing what hole has to be filled by pledges in order to balance. And so that's the only real reason that we do a draft budget at this point. And of course, the final budget depends on what the actual pledges are, and then vestry then approves it, and then that goes to the congregation for approval in May.
Dave Rue, if I can answer your question about Gage Hall, we are looking at some quotes on various items to just improve aesthetically Gage Hall, to hopefully help with some rentals. We do need to do some just work, some duct work under the floors. It's a good time to do it when people aren't around. So we're looking at that. And then potentially refinishing floors, updating the kitchen a little bit. We are looking at doing the hurricane shutters on the Gage Hall facing the churchyard. So those are the type of things that we're currently looking at with the Buildings and Grounds Committee.
Did you mention painting?
And painting the porches, front and back porches of Gage Hall, which will be really nice.
And a conservative amount
both of the Buildings and Grounds Committee, as well as some maintenance reserve funds that we'll be able to utilize. And then the end of the limeade funds, which when we kicked off the lime wash funds, we said it would be for the lime wash of the sanctuary as well as hurricane protection. So that's where the money for the shutters will be coming from.
So that's not depending on having to, have the budget. And the churchyard renovation is going to be paid for largely out of an endowment, a bequest of one of our members, Fabian Shepper, that died several years ago. And so that's something that we can look forward to. And a question from Nancy about conservative amount coming from the endowment. Endowment has had a great year, like anybody that owned a stock. I mean, you had to really work hard not to make money in the stock market last year. And endowment made a good amount of money. And so 3% of the endowment which is about $24,000 of their income is coming to the church, to the vestry for various projects, including some of those that Sandra mentioned, and also other chunks from the endowment for music and churchyard. But endowment is only providing funds for special events, not for operating purposes.
All right, I think we can end on Simon's comment that it looks like we're in pretty good shape, I think. How's that sound, Ren?
Yeah, the only I'm a glass half empty kind of person. Judy gave me a mug that has a line in it to indicate where the glass is half empty, because I'm always looking at, okay, things are really good. If we can get the pledge payments up, and so we have identified that as something that we need to pay attention to and develop a little plan to try to do that. And we will continue to remind people in the gateway and during the campaign. And if we have to send people door to door with baseball bats, we'll do that if we need to. But the idea is to get pledge payments back up to historical levels, so we will be able to finish the year in the black.
Ren, on that note, since I'm one of the main culprits on that, I would volunteer to make phone calls if you need, not baseball bats, but if you need reminder phone calls of, hey,
That'd be great. Okay.
I'm one of those people, so
Okay.
All right. With that, I'd like to thank our speakers. Thanks to everyone who spent this rainy Saturday morning hearing all about the budget. You are committed, and we appreciate it. So thank you. And we will see you in worship.
And next week, Danielle, you authors for members of the congregation have books out, and they will be talking about their books next Sunday.
Hey, folks, thanks.
And if anybody has any further questions, you can always shoot us